Very cool. And good afternoon, producer Susan. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, Jersee Joe. How are you?
Good. We got temperature up in almost 50 degrees today. After
Not quite here. It's right around 40 degrees here.
well, that's the first time we've been above 32 in 2 weeks. So it's the thaw is here. It's finally happening. So all right,
And today is Fat Tuesday.
the Fat Tuesday, right? And tomorrow's Ash Wednesday for those Catholics.
Yep.
Fat Tu Fat Tuesday. So or that's so Lent starts tomorrow. That's why they call it Fat Tuesday. So you gorge. Because if you're a practicing Catholic, you're supposed to be practicing fasting during Lent and giving something up. So you kind of get it all out of your system today. So that's why it's Fat Tuesday. All right. Yeah. Oh, by the way, I watched the final the wrestling match of Penn State versus Ohio State.
Huh?
What a blowout that was. So Penn
Yeah.
State undefeated for the season, right?
Yeah, I don't I admit I do not understand how the scoring works, but I know that we won and we won significantly against the number two Ohio State.
By the way, I'll give you a quick run because I didn't either. So I've got some friends who are wrestling fanatics. Actually, they drove out to the game, and it's not how many matches you win or lose. So first of all, each match is scored. Like you can win 7-3 or 12-4 or whatever. But what they do is when you win a match, even though you might have won by, say, an 11-point margin, depending on how you won, you might earn 4 or 5 points for the win.
Hmm.
So, and you can also win a match and only get 1 point for the win. Even though you might have won by 5 scoring points, you might only get 1 point for the win. So, you can win 6 out of 10 matches and still lose the match if the other team had more match points than you did.
Yeah,
So it's
I admit I really know nothing about
okay.
Penn State wrestling or wrestling in general, other than the fact that we have a great team.
You have a great team and you won 9 out of the 10 matches and you dominated. I think the final scoring was something like you were, I think you had like uh, 35-3. The match points were like 35-3 or 35-5. It was a
Yep.
dominating win. All
Yep.
right. Anyway, so you want to hear what we're going to try to talk about today?
Yeah, what's on the agenda?
Well, our quote of the week is from the late the Nobel economist Milton Friedman, comparing the amount of good a government can do for the economy versus the amount of harm a government can do. Stupidest thing we have all week, we have two nominees, and surprise, surprise, they're both from Congresswoman AOC. She's got two different contenders. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has two different nominees that she came up with this week. You have to tell us which one is the stupidest thing she said all
Shocking
week.
that they're both from her.
And both from her. Yes. That's first time we ever had two stupidest thing nominees from the same person in the same week. Um, by the way, do you know that there's a whole bunch of IRS employees who owe back taxes? Did you know that?
There's some irony for you.
Yeah. Well, we're going to tell you how many IRS employees there are that owe back taxes and how much they owe, and the numbers will astound you. And we're going to ask the question, why are these people still working for the IRS? Um, we'll also dissect the various opposing claims being made about the proposed SAVE Act that would, if passed, would require proof of citizenship to register to vote and a photo ID when you go to vote. Now, you don't have to provide proof of citizenship every time you go, but to register to vote initially one time, you'd have to provide proof of citizenship. And then when you went to vote, you'd have to say, here's my ID, because I am the person who registered to vote. And we'll talk about the opposing claims, some of which are wild and completely untrue. We'll talk about legislation being proposed in New York City that would require all Amazon delivery drivers to be actual employees of Amazon instead of independent contractors, which is very, very common, kind of like
Mhm.
Uber drivers. Do you have independent Amazon delivery drivers where you work, where you
We
live?
do.
Yeah.
And not just Amazon. I forget what it's called, but there's a third party delivery service that does like all of like the Walmarts, the Targets, the
Yep.
Instacarts.
Yeah.
And
Very,
I
very.
can't remember
Yeah.
what they're called. But they're
Yeah.
very popular around here.
Yeah, and it's very common, like for people, who only want to work part-time, they got a couple of days off. Like, there's some people now who have a 4-day work week, and you can say, "Hey, I'm available today," and if you don't want to work, you don't want to work. And people, it's kind of like flex thing. It's called like a
Mhm.
side hustle or a side gig.
Yep.
Anyway, there's a legislation that would change that, and we'll tell you who's behind that proposal. We have a clip from our old friend Bill Maher commenting on the person that the New York City Mayor Mondami has chosen to be his housing chief, and asked why the media has decided not to cover the story behind that choice. You're probably aware there was a mass shooting at a Rhode Island hockey rink this
I
week.
did hear that, yes.
And we'll look at the frightening number of mass shootings carried out by people who identify themselves as transgender. As it turns out, that shooter was a transgender person. Did you hear that?
I did not hear that part, no.
Well, the media doesn't want to broadcast that, but the shooter in Rhode Island was transgender.
I did not hear that.
In our health and science segment, we'll tell you about a new device that you can clip onto your underwear to improve your health. Did you hear about that one?
I did not hear that, no.
Okay. And our taxpayer relief shot comes from DeKalb County, Georgia, where a father who was hiding in a closet where his 4-year-old son winds up shooting and killing a home invader who decided to open that closet door. So anyway, so here's a quote of the week from Nobel Award-winning economist Milton Friedman, and he said, quote, "There are severe limits to the amount of good a government can do for an economy, but there are almost no limits to the harm that it can do."
True.
I
Yep.
mean, if you leave free enterprise alone, it'll prosper. But you
Hmm.
look at North Korea, you look at Cuba, you look at Venezuela, and it just, Somalia just destroys. You can destroy an
Yeah.
economy. You heard that there are no planes going into Cuba anymore because they have no more jet fuel, right?
Oh no, I didn't hear that.
But that came out last week. Yeah, there are. Cuba has run out of jet fuel, and since and even though there's been an embargo from the U.S., there are people from Mexico have been going to Cuba and Brazil, flying to Cuba. Well, they've had and all their freight comes in because they're an island. A lot of their freight comes in from cargo planes.
Hmm.
Well, they've run out of jet fuel, so no planes can go in because if you land there, there's no fuel to fuel you up and get you out. So for more than a week now, there's been no aircraft going in and out of Cuba because they've run out of jet fuel. And again, another example of the harm a government can do. Uh, and we've looked at the map of North Korea, South Korea, same
Yeah.
climate, same ocean, same terrain, same soil. You look at night and South Korea is lit up, it's bright, there's restaurants and theaters. And you look at the map in North Korea, you can barely see a few specks of light. And it's all come down to government. And you look at the collapse of Venezuela. We've talked about how their currency used to be the equivalent, the bolivar used to be the equivalent of $1.
Yep.
And the last time I checked, it was worth 1/10 of 1 US cent. And it was cheaper to use it as toilet paper than to try to buy toilet paper with it. And again, it comes down to the harm that the government has done to the economy. So one more time, there are severe limits to the amount of good a government can do for an economy, but there are almost no limits to the harm that it can do.
Yep.
And we have example after example after example. All right. So you want to move on to this AOC's nominees for the
Yeah, what did
stupidest thing?
AOC say this week?
Well, the first one is a short one. She's talking, by the way, and she was over. There was a big security conference in Munich, Germany, and she was there. And Marco Rubio, by the way, blew the door. He got a standing ovation talking about Europe and the partnership. Anyway, she's over there. She's being interviewed. This was one part of an interview where she talks about us going snatching Nicolas Maduro, who was not a recognized leader. He ignored the results of the election. He was not a recognized leader. But here she is and she's talking about where Venezuela is, and she's 100% wrong when she says where she thinks Venezuela is. Here we go. Whoop, hang on.
For example, it is not a it is not a remark on who Maduro was as a leader. He canceled elections. He was an anti-democratic leader. That doesn't mean that we can kidnap a head of state and engage in acts of war just because the nation is below the equator.
Now, I don't know if if you ever look at a map, Venezuela is kind of on level with Cancun. Venezuela is well north of the equator. So if you're going to open your mouth and say just because it's below the equator, don't you think you'd want to fact check that before you open your mouth and say that Venezuela is below the equator?
Yeah. Yeah.
Trust me, folks, it is well north of the equator, well north of the equator. So that was number one. Now here's number two, and she's at this security conference in Munich. All of Europe's there, and you'd think if you're gonna be asked questions, and one of the things Rubio talked about was, our partnership with Taiwan. And a reporter asks, do you think that uh, the United States should, offer support for Taiwan? And listen to her response. Here we go.
Would and should the U.S. actually commit U.S. troops to defend Taiwan if
Oh, by the way, this is the word salad of the ward. See if she actually says anything.
China were to move?
Um, you know, I think that this is such a, I think that this is this is of course a very longstanding policy of the United States.
Did she say anything? Are you there,
Yeah,
producer?
I don't get what she's trying to say.
Well, she said nothing. It's the words. I hear one more time. Word salad. Here we go.
Would and should the U.S. actually commit U.S. troops to defend Taiwan if China were to move?
You know, I think that this is such a, I think that this is this is of course a very longstanding policy of the United States.
A policy to support or to policy not to support? I don't
Well, she was
understand what she's
asked.
trying to say.
Well, she said even if she's saying it's a policy of the United States, she asked, "Do you?" She was asked, "Do you think the United States should?" You think if you're going to open yourself up to an interview, and this is the woman who is contemplating running for president in 2 years.
Yeah,
Um,
no.
so, which do you think is stupid? Her not being able to answer, not having a cogent, I'm going to use the word cogent response to that simple question about foreign policy, or saying that Venezuela is below the equator.
They're both, I mean, the majority of South America is below the equator, although Venezuela, being one of the northern countries of South America, is wholly above the
Yep,
equator. I
right.
mean, if she's not familiar with geography, I could see how that could have potentially have been an easy mistake, although I feel like she should have fact checkers on her staff.
Well, if you don't know, don't. If you don't know, you
Yeah, if you
didn't.
don't
You
know,
did.
don't say. But the other one, I'm not even sure what, I mean, her answer doesn't make any sense at all. The woman asked her a yes or no question, should we
Yeah,
defend Taiwan or not? And
yeah,
she went on about policy yes or policy no. So
yeah.
it just wasn't a coherent comment.
You're right. So, if you had to pick which one of those was more embarrassing for her, was it Venezuela below the equator, or the fact that she couldn't
I think
answer
the
simple?
second one, because sadly, a lot of other people probably don't know where Venezuela is in relation to the equator. And I hate to say that, but
Okay.
I think most everybody knows that Venezuela is in South America, and South America is mostly south of the equator. So I could see how that may have been. Now, somebody who's supposedly as educated as AOC should
Right.
have known better.
Right.
But the second answer, the second comment she made, that was just nonsensical gibberish.
I would have said, something about, it's a very complex question, and I'm still mulling. I would have deferred. And I'm not prepared to give you an answer today. I think that would
Mhm.
have made her look much better than what she did. Clearly, she was just treading water there, didn't have an answer.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. So let's talk about IRS. Now, if you work for IRS, you would assume that you would be current and up to date on your taxes. Well, an audit has shown that almost 6,000 IRS employees, 5,800, and here's the number, they collectively owe almost $50 million in past due taxes,
Oh my.
with many, many not even on a payment plan. Now, while the IRS has the authority to terminate employees for willful failure to pay taxes, only a small fraction have been fired. So here's the delinquent debt. Approximately 6,000 employees and some independent contractors owed roughly 46 million to 50 million in unpaid taxes. Now, a significant portion of these individuals, about 2,000, were not even on payment plans for their debt. So my question is, if you were the head of the IRS and you had over 2,000, well, let's assume, okay, you got 4,000 of the 6,000, or at least on a payment plan, but you got 2,000 aren't even on a payment plan. Wouldn't you say, look, you got 6 months to either get on a payment plan or pay your taxes, or you're out of here? Wouldn't you do that?
Yeah. Or what's the word? What's the word when they take the money directly out of your paycheck?
They put a lien on. They put a lien.
No, there's another word for it.
Garnishment.
Garnish. Thank you. If you're not on a payment plan, they should just say that, if it comes to this, we're just going to garnish your wages.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I would do. I would say, you're either getting a payment plan or we're going to garnish your wages or you're out of here. Pick one. But and by the way, this goes all the way back to the Biden. This is not something that just happened. This has been going on for years. This goes back to the Biden administration.
I'd be further curious to know, of those, how many employees did you say it was? How many?
6,000 total.
6,000 total. Of those 6,000, how many of those 6,000 employees are actually auditors who audit you, because they should be audited themselves?
That's a great question. That's a great
So
question.
I would love to know the breakdown of employees on there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question. I don't know. I don't think it's in the report, but yeah, I mean, you just shake your head. IRS has 6,000 employees who are delinquent in their taxes, and 2,000 aren't even on a payment plan. You just shake your head and again, in private industry, that would never happen in private industry, ever, ever. I mean, if you work for a company and you owe the company money and you weren't paying, if you work for Walmart and you bought something on credit from Walmart and you weren't paying your bill, do you think Walmart would keep you on the payroll? So,
No.
all right. All right. Let's talk about the SAVE Act. We all know the SAVE Act, right? It's passed the House.
Mm-hmm.
It may or may not make it through the Senate. Uh, it's the Voting Act. It's to prove that you're a citizen, to get registered to vote, and show that you're the person who was registered by showing a photo ID. So here's some of the myth versus fact. One of the myths, well, you'd have to show a passport to vote. No, you don't have to show a passport to vote. You only have to show a photo ID when casting your vote. A real ID driver's license qualifies. Here's another myth. Deployed abroad U.S. service members can't vote. No, the same procedures. If you have a military ID, you can request your absentee ballot with your military ID. They claim it's unconstitutional, violates constitutional principles. No, the elections and naturalization clauses, paragraphs 15, 19, 24, and 26 support that act. Married women can't change. Married women with name changes can't vote. Well, guess what? If you can get a passport, like my wife, my sister-in-law, my daughter-in-law, do you have married women, or you have married women friends who have passports?
Yeah, I think everybody, all of my friends all have a passport.
All your married friends, right? Well, if you
Yeah.
can get a passport, you had to prove citizenship to get a passport, right?
Yeah,
Well, if you
of
can,
course.
and it wasn't that tough. I remember all my wife had to do was to get a copy of her birth certificate and a copy of her marriage license, and boom, that was proof of that she was a citizen, and that she's the same person named on her birth certificate. That's all it took, and it's a one-time deal. Once you prove your citizenship, you only have to do that when you're registered. And once you do it for the rest of your life, you can continue to vote with a photo ID. So the fact that married women with name changes won't be able to vote, that's complete BS. And it requires voter ID with citizen proof to vote. No. It'll accept once you're registered to vote, any form of ID, military ID, a real ID, driver's license, all of those are acceptable to vote. And by the way, if you're on Medicaid, if you're poor and on Medicaid, you'll have a photo ID. If you want to buy Sudafed over the counter at the pharmacy, you have to have a photo ID, right? You can't buy decongestant without a photo ID, right?
Yeah, what did I tell you just a couple weeks ago? I got carded buying something
Uh,
silly. Oh, paint. I think I bought spray paint or something. I got
yeah,
carded.
spray paint, right? You had to show that you're over 21 to buy spray paint, right?
Yeah.
All right.
And I think, it having gone through getting a passport and getting a real ID, I'll say it is actually harder to get a real ID than it is a passport. And I think where people are confused by the whole married women name change is that you have to show the paper, especially if you're married, divorced, and remarried. You basically just have to show the paper trail of I was born with this name.
Right.
I got married, so here's my marriage certificate that changed my name to this last name. Here's my divorce decree that says I can go back to my maiden name or keep my married name. And then here's my new marriage certificate that I changed my name a third time
Right.
or possibly a fourth time. So you just have to show the paper trail. You have to show, I was born this name, I got married to this name, I got divorced to this name, I got married to this name. You just have to show the paper trail.
Once and only once, and that's the same thing. Now, by
Yeah.
the way, if you have a passport, that one document does both. It's proof of citizenship
Yeah.
and proof of ID. So if you can get a passport, even if you get a passport, that's great. That's the only thing you need.
Mhm.
But if you can get a passport, you can meet the requirements of the SAVE Act. It's that
Yeah, and I
simple.
think the reason why it's harder to get a real ID than a passport is because a passport is showing that you are born, you're a United States citizen. You're either born or you
Naturalized.
have become a United States citizen. Why it's more difficult for a driver's license or a state issued real ID is because you have to show proof of residency
That's right.
where you actually live. So that's why it's actually harder to get a real ID because you have to
Okay.
show like your electric bill or
Right.
proof of that's your actual address.
Right.
Whereas your address is not on your passport.
Right. Right. But when you register to vote, unless you move, once you register, you don't have to show again. You only have to show that once when you register to vote.
Mhm.
It's not like you have to show it every single
Yeah.
time. All right. You want to move on to Amazon workers?
Yeah.
Okay. So we at the beginning we talked about there's a piece of legislation pending that would require now. By the way, Amazon does have some delivery drivers, but they
Mhm.
also use a lot of independent contractors. And independent contractors love it. They can work when they want to work. They don't want to work, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. They don't want to be in a shift. They either sign on and say, I'm available or I'm not available. And it was the same way with Uber and Lyft drivers, right?
Yeah.
Well, New York City has proposed that it would require that all delivery drivers operating in the city of New York be employees of Amazon. Now, of course, first of all, what do you think that would do to the delivery costs?
Oh, it would make them increase significantly.
Right. So if that were to happen, you could expect to see a surcharge for anything you order on Amazon that's going to be delivered in the city of New York. You might see a $2 surcharge, whatever. I don't know what the number would be, because Amazon is not going to eat that increased cost. So who's it going to wind up hurting?
The consumer,
The
us.
consumer, right? Clearly, Amazon can't absorb because Amazon, by the way, as a big company, they have to
Mhm.
provide health and retirement benefits. You can't selectively say, well, we're going to give the people who work in our distribution centers health and a 401k, but we're not going to give our delivery drivers. So they would have to give, company subsidized health insurance and 401k and paid time off, paid holidays would have to be made available to all those delivery drivers, and that's going to increase their delivery costs. So I think you would clearly see a delivery surcharge for any product being shipped into New York City. Um, and of course, people are going to lose the flexibility as employees are going to lose the flexibility to work when they want to work. But who do you think is behind this besides the politicians? Who do you think is funding this and paying all the PR?
Other than I'm not sure. It's probably the liberals.
No, it's the Teamsters Union.
Oh, well, yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense.
Because if this goes through, what do you think the Teamsters' next move would be?
They're gonna demand those jobs.
They're going to try to unionize all the delivery drivers in New York
Mhm.
City. So this is just a power grab by the Teamsters. Step one is to get the city to work with them to require that all the delivery drivers be employees. And once they're employees, next thing you know, they're going to try to sign them all up to become union members.
Yep.
So it's a Teamster. So it's a union. This is nothing more than a union grab.
Yep.
And if they're successful in New York, you can expect to see it in San Francisco. You can expect to see it in every city, Detroit, Chicago. It's going to go like, wildfire through the country. So anyway, so that's what's happening. New York City is going to be the test case if they can get this through. And I guarantee if it goes through in New York City, the Teamsters will attempt to unionize those drivers, and I believe they would succeed.
Mhm.
All right. All right. Let's move on to New York City Mayor Mondami's choice for the head of their housing authority. And I'm going to guarantee you haven't heard this story because the media has chose to not cover it. But his choice for the his head of the New York City Housing Authority, by the way, she's a full-blown, makes no bones about it. She's an absolute rabid communist who thinks private property ownership needs to be done away with. And here's Bill Maher talking about this. And you haven't heard that, have you?
I have not, no.
Well, here we go.
Tell you about the story that liberal algorithms blocked out. Her name is Sia Weaver. And if you ask anyone in the blue sky bubble who that is, they'll look at you like a turkey looking up at the rain. Major Mamdani's chief of the Office to Protect Tenants, and since Mamdani's big issue is the rent's too damn high, it's a very key appointment in the most important city in the country, which is also our financial center. It matters that the mayor stands by, and so I assume stands with, someone who says things like, if you don't believe in the government's sacred right to seize private property, it's over.
If you don't believe in the government's right to seize private property, and that's one, we're going more, here we go more.
Seize private property. Home ownership is racist. Elect more.
Do you own a home? You own your own home?
Yeah, of course.
Do you know that makes you racist?
I did not know that made me racist.
Well, here, let me play that again.
Government's sacred right to seize private property, it's over. Seize private property. Home ownership is racist. Elect more communists. Private property, especially home ownership, is a weapon of white supremacy.
There you go. Did you know that you're using it as a weapon of white supremacy?
I did not know that.
There we go.
Really? Even among the 20 million Black Americans who own their own home?
So here's the question. I mean, we'll talk about far out radical stuff, right? Did you think if that was a Republican, ranting about similar extreme views, wouldn't that be on the evening news?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Why hasn't the media covered that? I mean, talk about far out radical stuff like home owners racist. We need to do away with private property ownership. Why hasn't the media felt that was a newsworthy story?
I don't know. That's a very good question.
Okay. All right. Now we're going to move on to something that's tragic. You heard about the mass shooting at the hockey rink in Rhode Island?
I did. Very sad. All those poor children.
Right. And just last week, we had the mass shooting up in British Columbia, Tumbler Ridge High School. I think 8 students and a teacher were killed, and the shooter also killed, I think, mother and brother or father and brother.
I didn't hear about the Canadian shooting.
Tumbler Ridge High School in British Columbia? I didn't
hear that one. I only heard about the one up in Rhode Island.
Oh, last week it was Tumbler Ridge High School in British Columbia. An 18-year-old kid took a pistol and a rifle to school after he had killed, I think it was his mother and brother. I say he was a transgender woman. He had born a man. At age 12, he began undergoing transgender different surgeries and hormone treatments. And at 18, he went to school and decided to, after killing his mother and brother, decided to kill 8 students and a teacher at the school. But what's alarming is that for the 5th time in recent memory, the shooter was either a transgender person or a person involved in a romantic relationship with a transgender person. And in case you don't remember them, this is just recent memory. So we have the Pawtucket, Rhode Island hockey arena. It was a guy who was transgender woman. It was a biological man dressing as a woman. And that was in Pawtucket, Rhode Island yesterday. Tumbler Ridge High School in British Columbia last week, 10 dead people. Just last August in Minneapolis, the guy that opened fire on the church during Sunday, it was a Catholic school and they were doing weekday services in the church, and he opened fire from outside the church through the church windows. I forget how many. I think he killed half a dozen or more very young students in the church that morning. The shooter who killed Charlie Kirk last year was in a romantic relationship with a transgender woman, i.e. a guy who was transitioning to woman. So he was in a homosexual relationship with a transgender woman. In Colorado, a couple years ago, you had the STEM shooting in Highlands Ranch, Colorado, where the shooter was transgender. And the shooter at the Rite Aid Distribution Center in Aberdeen, Maryland. Now, Let me put things in perspective. Overall, only about 2% of mass shootings. Oh, I forgot the Covenant School in Tennessee. You remember that one where the transgender woman
Yes. Mhm.
went into the Covenant School in Tennessee, began killing students randomly?
Yes.
Now, here's a perspective. Overall, only about 2% of mass shootings or mass shootings and or school shootings are carried out by transgender people. But transgender people represent less than 1% of the population. So when you look at that 2% divided by the 1%, the ratio of people who are transgender who become mass shooters is literally off the charts. I, I mean, yeah, it's so off the charts you can't even plot it. The graph would be if you looked at the percentage of transgender people who become school shooters or mass shooters versus the percentage of, white male Caucasians. It's not even you couldn't put them on the same piece of graph paper.
I've always said, and we've said this before on the show, this, regardless of your sexual orientation, whether you're a mass shooter or a school shooter, there's this, this country is suffering a mental health crisis. We do not have a gun problem. We have a mental health problem in this country. And I think especially with the transgender population, especially a child who is going through this transitional, a child going through puberty has a lot of emotional thing, like trying to figure themselves out, and then add in, becoming transgender. There's a whole nother level of confusion and emotions, and this country has a mental health crisis.
And shame on the parents for allowing this kid to begin a transition process at age 12. I would have said, Bobby, I know you're confused, but let's just wait a couple years. I mean, I can't imagine 50 years ago if a kid came to the parents and said, well, I think I want to become a girl. I think you have to put a lot of blame on parents. Hey, I know we're running short on time, aren't we?
We are. Yep, we are running out of time.
Do I have time for one more, or do I need to go right to taxpayer leave shot?
We have 5 minutes left.
All right, real quick. University of Maryland have come up with a wearable sensor that clips onto a person's underwear and monitors gut bacteria activity by measuring the hydrogen gas and flatulence for up to a week on a single battery. The device detected dietary changes with a 95% accuracy in a study of 38 people, revealing that participants pass gas 32 times a day on average, far more than the 10 to 20 episodes people typically self-report. This came out last week, right after our last podcast. It would have been a great Valentine's Day gift. Honey, look what I got you for Gallons a Day, a fart monitor. You clip it to your underwear. Don't you think that would have gone over better than flowers? All right. So yes, there's now a fart monitor that so for your loved one, maybe your wife or girlfriend's birthday, you can get her a fart monitor. All right, I know we're running short of time. Let's go right to DeKalb County, Georgia, where a father's hiding from a home invader in a closet. He doesn't want to have a confrontation. Here we go.
Story: a father hiding a closet with his 4-year-old son shot and killed an intruder. Another intruder got away. And Nuisance 4, Channel 2's Liz Arts live in DeKalb County, where neighbors say the suspects used to live in the neighborhood.
People out here are telling us that the suspect who was shot and killed was very well known in this neighborhood. In fact, they just moved out a short time ago. We also got a look at the family of the father who was hiding in the closet with his son. His son was smiling and seemed to be happy. It looks like he's going to be okay. I'm going to step out of the way because it is still a very active scene out here. Detectives on the scene. The building is roped off. Police tell us that the second intruder is still on the run.
Very scary,
Wait, his buddy ran off and left him? That's never happened before, has it?
Never.
Okay.
Scared myself. I'm so uncomfortable living in the neighborhood. I've been here since 2009. It just got rough.
Neighbors were frightened when they heard about the latest break-in at Farrington Ridge. They were horrified when they learned a 4-year-old boy witnessed his dad shooting and killing a home invasion suspect. The child, seen here with his mom, seemed to be in good spirits.
This is about the worst that I've heard. This is about the worst that I've heard.
2 guys went into the wrong home, and they were met by a homeowner who was there protecting himself and a 4-year-old.
Police told us Friday 2 men burst through the door of 1104 Farrington Ridge Circle and were robbing the place as a father and his 4-year-old hid in an upstairs closet. When the intruders opened the closet door, the father fired a round, killing one suspect. The other got away.
Wasn't bothering anybody in the back room, watching television. When these subjects came in, very much unexpected. We don't have any reason at this point to believe that any of them knew each other.
Residents say break-ins have been bad in the neighborhood, but told us police have been responding.
Police presence is real strong out here. They're out here every day. And they cracking down on it. They not taking it anymore.
They say residents are fed up too.
People just tired of their houses being broken in around here, and they not putting up with it anymore.
All right, so that's enough of that. So again, it happens multiple times a week. We only talk about one a week, but trust me, this is almost a daily occurrence in this country. Remember, when seconds count, the police are minutes away.
Yep.
Any comments before we sign off?
Good for that father protecting this child, himself and his child.
Yep, absolutely. All right, folks, you want to see anything, just go to jerseyjoe.com, give producer Susan a day or two. If you want to send me a question, you want any of these story links, just email me to joe@jerzeyjoe.com. Just remember to spell Jersey with an R, a Z, and 2 E's. That's J-E-R as in Robert, Z as in zebra, E-E, jerseyjoe.com. So again, email me at joe@jerseyjoe.com. Be happy to send you any of the links you heard us talk about today. And with that, producer Susan, I'll talk to you next week. You take care.
All right.
Great. Bye-bye.